continued to place us in a horticultural or agricultural venue. Last week we were talking about the sower. This week we're talking about the harvest. And what happens in between is kind of there as well. And you know, if you were here last week, or you remember the parable of the sower, the harvest here really shouldn't surprise us because of the haphazard way in which the sower threw the seed on the ground. You know, some landed in good soil, some landed on hard soil, some landed on dry soil, some landed on rocks. I mean, what do you really expect? And here we see what to expect. There's weeds popping up everywhere. And there appears to be, behind the words, a sense of urgency as to take care of this matter. You know, you look out at the garden, you say, holy cow, all those weeds come. I got to fix this. Have you ever done that? I mean, have you ever in your own lives made a decision or jumped into a project very quickly because the outcome, the needs, what had to be done seemed so obvious and clear? You said, well, I know what to do, so you do it, and then when it's all done, the result is not exactly what you thought it should be. Anybody done that? Nobody. Not one person here has ever done that. Man, I built a whole basement that way. I put it up and I have to take it apart because it wasn't exactly the way I thought it should be. You know, there's that, and we do this quite rapidly in our own culture because we expect things to be fixed and fixed quickly. You know, my computer goes down, I want an answer now. I need it up now, you know, and so we rapidly seek someone who can do that for us. We rush to clean it up. We rush to make it right. And yet we all know that our immediate responses and our immediate actions to the problems we're trying to fix is not always the best one. Have you ever written a letter in anger in the first 24 hours? You know, they tell you, never send the letter you write first to someone because you will regret it. Well, let me say to you, I think that's the issue behind this parable. That's what's going on behind this text. The church, Matthew, they're asking, how do we make things right? How do we fix things that aren't going exactly the way we anticipated or thought they should? They appear to be wrong, at least on the surface. And you know, when we try to fix things, especially when we try to fix things quickly, the answers are not always right and not always clear. And so the solutions are the same way. Let's go back, for example, let's go back to the gardening illustration. Let's talk about gardening and horticulture for a moment. You know, I quickly learned in Florida that this stuff around my house we call grass, even though in Illinois I would have sprayed Roundup on it to kill it, is acceptable down here. In fact, a lot of things that we grow and call pretty in Florida would be killed in other parts of the country. Right? In fact, I pay money to keep it alive. And further complicating this truth, when you think about what's a weed, what's a plant, what's valuable and what's not, think about the fact that a lot of weeds serve a purpose. You know, if you go into arid areas, weeds keep the soil from blowing away. Weeds hold it together. And even further complex is the fact that you don't always see the good that's in weeds. And we've come to know that there are many drugs and medications that literally come from weeds. From painkillers, you know, comes from opium to different types of drugs that treat Hodgkin's disease and even cancer. You know, my daughter, the soon-to-be psychologist, will say in terms of medical marijuana, she says it really makes a difference. You know, there we are with something that, what do we do? So the point is that even when we think we know what's good and what's bad, what's right and what's wrong, what's a weed and what's a productive fruit, it's not always that clear. And so if we rush in to make decisions about what we pull up, we may not get it right. The problem is, as we apply this now and we move away from produce and agriculture, the problem is we use those same kinds of judgments in regards to other people and cultures and situations as well. It's not just wheat and weeds, it's people and how they think and how they act, and do they act according to the way we think they should or not. I mean, sometimes we look at other people and cultures and we say, well, how can they live like that? How can they live without this or that? The irony is they're looking at us and saying, why do you need that? Can't you live without that? I mean, why do the British drive on the wrong side of the road? And why do they turn their forks upside down when they eat? You notice that? Why? What purpose does it serve? Why can't they get it right? What difference does it make? Still, we try to fix these things according to our beliefs, our standard, our interpretation of weeding things out. And unfortunately, when we do this quickly or without long-term thinking, sometimes in the weeding process, we do more damage than fixing. Take the problems in the Middle East. If you look at most of the problems in the Middle East, whether it's Iraq or it's Syria, soon to be probably Jordan, a lot of those problems come from quick decisions made by the Allies after the First World War, where they simply said, well, this is going to be a country regardless of ethnic, religious, cultural, or tribal differences. And now we see them trying to break up into those different groups of people. Even when you look at Israel and the creation of Israel, in the late 19th century, they were trying to form Israel in Uganda. And then all of a sudden, everything changed and it became Palestine, and we have the issues we have today. And we get frustrated with that, and yet, California is trying to split into 7 states. And that makes a lot of sense too, actually, if you've ever been to California. But the point is we make quick decisions and we make rash judgments, and sometimes we think that we are smarter than we are, and sometimes we should not write that letter in 24 hours, but we should take a pause, take a breath, and allow God to work things out. That we should step back and let God work things out. You see, our text reminds us of this. It reminds us that God knows people better than we do. The Good Samaritan, the woman at the well. It is God who sees where we cannot see. It is God who sees into other people's hearts, as well as our own. And the truth is, if I look around, the truth is I have enough weeds in my own life to take care of. Why do I seek to point out the ones in everybody else's? Jesus kind of said that. Remember, he looked at the people around him and said, why is it that you see the sliver in somebody else's eye and you miss the log in your own? He says, why do you do that? Why don't you pay attention to your own issues and problems? Come in. Yeah, it's okay. It's okay. Jesus boiled it all down to, when he asked what is the greatest commandment, Jesus boiled it all down to what? Love God, love neighbor, love them both as you love yourself. Really that simple. It's Leonard Sweet, one of my favorite authors, preachers, evangelists, teachers, who wrote, and I've shared this before, but it bears sharing again. So the church is filled with too many golden rule Christians, whose motto is, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And not enough platinum rule Christians, which is to do unto others as they would have you do unto them. He says what we are most lacking, though, and need the most is titanium rule Christians who practice the most powerful command of all, that is, to do unto others as Christ has already done unto you. And we believe that Christ has loved and forgiven us despite the weeds that grow in our own personal gardens. So why is it that we struggle so mightily to extend that grace, love, and forgiveness to those around us? Do unto others as Christ has already done unto you. When I look back at my own life, there have been times when I should have been weeded out. I am sure that my teachers did not think I was going to bear any good fruit. I think back, I come from a family of German immigrants, and my father, who was a preacher, early on preached in both German and in English as those people were assimilated into this society. And our home, whenever my parents wanted to say something to one another that they didn't want the kids to know, they spoke in German, right? So, we thought, well, we'll take German in school so that we can understand what they're talking about. Of course, my parents spoke what they call Low German, and they taught High German in school. But anyway, so as I'm in my German class, it was taught by Herr McKelkey. Herr McKelkey was a German soldier who was a POW brought over to the United States. There are a lot of POW camps in the Nebraska, Colorado, Wyoming area at that time. And after the war, he stayed in the United States and he taught German. I wasn't the best of students. And one day, Herr McKelkey, who sat like this, he always kind of rubbed these two fingers. These two were shot off, I think. They were missing. He looks at me and he goes, "Kiet." There's no TH in German, Kiet. "Kiet, you could be good student. Your Vater, he speak good Deutsch. You could be good student. Get D, maybe C. But you screw around too much," he says. That's a weed. Pull it out. But thanks goodness, at the same time in my life, there were other people who, when I didn't know what I was about, they knew what I might be about, could be about, and they saw good, and they just kind of rode that wave through. Sometimes we can't tell the weeds from the weed, and sometimes the weeds have good in them that we don't see, and sometimes it just takes time to bring it out and make a difference. I love that bumper sticker that says, "Be patient, God isn't through with me yet." Friends, so it is with our individual lives and the hope of God. But not just our life. We personalize the faith too much. If it has to do with me, it has to do with everybody. If we believe God is working individually in and through us, then we must give other people the same benefit of the doubt, whether we understand them or not. We must allow God the opportunity to take care of things in God's own time. And that's hard. In an age where we want to fix things and fix them quickly, and so many things feel out of control to us. We would like to get a handle on it, but sometimes we need to take a breath, give it 24 hours, step back, pause, and let God do what God will. It's hard. It was hard for the original disciples, and it is hard for those who would be disciples today. But as I read these two parables, the sower and the weeds and the wheat, what I think, at least in terms of applying it to myself, I think our job is simply to scatter seeds. Our job is to worry less about pulling people out and pushing people out. Our job is to scatter the seeds of good news and then be about the business of tending, nurturing, and caring for them as best we can. Sharing forgiveness, offering grace, and extending compassion as we have had it shared with us. Because ultimately, I believe God is seeking to work with and through, in some way or another, all the wheat and the weeds. Outside us, around us, but also in us. And I suspect that God expects us to do the same. Amen. At this time, we will continue.